The night the most feared man in the city became a father, the entire skyline seemed to glow a little brighter. Inside the private wing of St. Vincent Hospital, armed guards stood outside the doors, their cold eyes scanning every hallway and corner. Nurses whispered as they passed by, careful not to linger too long. Everyone in the building knew who was inside that room. Everyone knew that Vittorio Romano, the most powerful mafia boss in the city, was about to meet his son. Vittorio Romano wasn't a man known for fear. His name alone could freeze a room. Rivals vanished when he snapped his fingers, politicians answered his calls before their own wives, and entire neighborhoods moved when he decided a building needed to stand somewhere else. But as he paced the hospital corridor, his hands trembling slightly, the powerful king of the underground looked like any other nervous father waiting to hear his child cry for the first time. After hours that felt like years, the door finally opened. A doctor stepped out, removing his gloves. Vittorio rushed forward instantly. "How is my wife?" he asked. "She's stable," the doctor replied carefully. "And my son?" There was a brief pause. Just a second. But Vittorio noticed it. "He's healthy," the doctor said slowly. "Strong heartbeat. Good lungs." Vittorio smiled with relief. "But, there's something you should know." That smile faded. The doctor lowered his voice. "We believe your son may have been born deaf." The hallway went silent. For a moment Vittorio didn't move. The most powerful man in the city just stood there, staring at the doctor as if the words had bounced off him. "What did you say?" He didn't react to sound, the doctor explained gently. "We clapped, spoke loudly, even tested with medical instruments." There was no response. Vittorio's jaw tightened. "That's impossible." "We'll run more tests," the doctor said quickly. "Sometimes newborns." But Vittorio was already walking past him. Inside the hospital room, his wife Isabella lay exhausted but smiling faintly. In her arms rested a tiny baby wrapped in a white blanket. Vittorio stepped closer slowly. His son. His heir. The boy who would inherit an empire. He leaned down and whispered softly. "Marco." The baby blinked. But he didn't react to the voice. Vittorio snapped his fingers beside the baby's ear. Nothing. The room suddenly felt very small. Isabella noticed the tension in his face. "What's wrong?" she asked weakly. Vittorio forced a smile. "Nothing." But deep inside, something had cracked. Because in Vittorio Romano's world, weakness was dangerous. And the heir to his empire had just been born into silence. Years passed. Marco Romano grew up in a mansion that looked more like a fortress than a home. Security cameras watched every angle. Black SUVs lined the driveway. Armed men guarded the gates. But inside those massive walls lived a quiet boy who spent most of his days alone. Marco was 6 years old when the doctors finally confirmed what everyone already suspected. He was completely deaf. Vittorio had spent millions on specialists across the world. Germany, Japan, Switzerland, America. Every doctor said the same thing. "There's nothing we can do." At first Vittorio refused to accept it. He hired therapists, teachers, speech experts. Marco learned to read lips a little, learned basic sign language, and communicated through gestures and writing. But the silence never changed. And Vittorio hated silence. The mafia boss who ruled the loudest, most dangerous world imaginable now lived in a house where his son couldn't hear a single word he spoke. Yet despite that, Vittorio loved the boy fiercely. He would sit beside Marco during dinner, watching him carefully form signs with his small hands. Isabella often translated. "He's asking if you'll come to his school tomorrow," she said once. Vittorio looked uncomfortable. He wasn't a man who attended school events. But when he saw the hope in Marco's eyes, he nodded. Yes. Marco smiled. That smile could melt the coldest parts of Vittorio Romano. But outside the mansion walls, the world was not kind. Other children whispered. Some laughed. The Mafia prince can't even hear. Marco didn't understand every insult, but he understood enough. And each time he came home quieter than before. One afternoon Vittorio watched his son sitting alone in the garden, drawing in a notebook. He approached slowly. Marco looked up and smiled. Vittorio knelt beside him. What are you drawing? Marco couldn't hear him, but he showed the page anyway. It was a picture of the two of them. Holding hands. Standing in front of the mansion. Vittorio felt a lump in his throat. The boy who lived in silence still saw his father as a hero. But Vittorio wondered something he'd never admit out loud. How could a child who couldn't hear survive in a world built on power, threats, and whispers? Because in Vittorio Romano's world, the man who couldn't hear the danger coming didn't survive. One rainy evening, everything began to change. Vittorio rarely left the mansion with Marco, but that night Isabella insisted they go out for dinner together. Marco deserves a normal life, she said. So they visited a quiet restaurant downtown. The place wasn't fancy. Just a small family restaurant with warm lights and wooden tables. Marco liked it immediately. He watched the chefs through the kitchen window with fascination. A young waitress approached their table. Her name tag read Lena.